The Biden administration announced to Congress this week an upcoming $1 billion arms sale to Israel, even as President Biden withholds other munitions from Israel in an effort to prevent the IDF from rooting out Hamas battalions in Rafah. House Speaker Mike Johnson and other GOP leaders encouraged the Senate today to pass the Israel Security Assistance Support Act, which condemns the Biden administration for this policy. Could this move pressure the Biden administration to back away from limiting Israel to half measures in their war against Hamas? Joining me now by phone to discuss this and more is U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina. He serves on 4 Senate committees, including the Senate Judiciary Committee, where he's the ranking member, and also the Senate Appropriations Committee. Senator Graham, welcome back to Washington Watch. Always great to have you on.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tony.
Let me first ask you about your assessment of the Biden administration and how they are handling the munitions issue with Congress, or with Israel, based upon the actions Congress has taken. Are we seeing any movement there?
Well, we're seeing a political conversion, not a change of heart, but a change of attitude. The idea of stopping weapons flows to Israel backfired. You had a lot of donors of the Democratic Party that just objected vehemently. The polling has been off the charts. Give Israel what they need to win a war they can't afford to lose. And the weapons that we're talking about are 2,000-pound bombs that can be converted into precision-guided munitions called JDAMs, and they're necessary to get to the tunnels. You need a bomb that big to go down to where these cowards are hiding. And that has been a mistake. It's going to prolong the war, give them the bombs they need to destroy Hamas, period. Weapons are beginning to flow again. I think this bit Biden politically, but we're still arguing over the bombs that we need, bunker busters.
The Israel Security Assistance Support Act that the House is working on, sending over to the Senate, Republican leaders in the House speaking about that today. Is there going to be pressure there in the Senate to act?
I hope so. I did a resolution condemning the decision to withhold weapons. Look at it this way. The reason so many Palestinians have been killed is Hamas wants them killed. Hamas uses the Palestinian people as human shields against Israel. They put weapons in mosques and schools and build command centers under hospitals, and they put their own people in harm's way. They won't let them leave. When Israel says, leave this area, Hamas won't let them leave. The answer is not to deprive Israel of weapons. They need to beat the terrorists. You don't want to reward terrorists who put civilians in harm's way by restricting the ability of the victim, Israel, to fight back. So Mike Johnson has been awesome. I really am so impressed with the speaker at so many levels. They passed legislation that would change his policy. The question, you're a smart guy, the Impoundment Act. A lot of people don't spend much of their day trying to figure out the Impoundment Act, but it's a legal concept that says when Congress appropriates something and directs funds, the administration has to agree. So there's a real fight going on over this, but Mike put legislation on the floor of the House. It's coming to the Senate, and Schumer's going to block it, and we need to raise holy hell.
It's inexplicable what this administration is doing to our key ally, which is a stabilizing force in the Middle East that you and I have talked about, Israel. I want to go to, I'm going to play a clip from Israeli spokesman David Mincer today. You made a reference to how Hamas conducts business. The IDF yesterday, further proof of the way they operate. Clip number 7, please.
Yesterday, further proof of the terror involvement of Hamas within UNRWA was exposed. Armed terrorists shooting from within an UNRWA compound alongside UN vehicles.
All right, UNRWA, for our viewers and listeners, a United Nations agency. They were linked, IDF intelligence linked them to the October 7th attack. Further evidence that these guys don't care who they put at risk or what they use to accomplish their purposes.
Well, it's a couple things. It tells you a lot about UNRWA. So UNRWA is a UN agency that's supposed to deliver aid, right? Well, they hire local folks to do it. And they've hired people that are really Hamas sympathizers. We found tunnels under UNRWA's headquarters. Now you've got video evidence of the compound being used for military purposes, so that's why we cut off all U.S. funding to UNRWA. In our last supplemental, UNRWA doesn't get a dime because they've been used by Hamas sympathizers within the UN organization to provide, support to Hamas. But this is further evidence. So just real quickly, Israel was attacked viciously on October the 7th. Hamas wants to kill all the Jews. Hezbollah wants to kill all the Jews. The Ayatollah wants to wipe out the Jewish state. And if you watch television, Israel's the bad guy. You can't make this up.
Right. Maybe I missed this, Senator, but did the United Nations Security Council meet and tell Hamas to quit using UN facilities to hide behind and facilitate their attack against Israeli troops?
They haven't done anything. If you watch television, if you came from Mars in the last 2 weeks and you're watching international news, you would think Israel is just on a quest to kill all the Palestinians. Here's what I believe. Israel would stop killing anybody if Hamas surrendered. And if Israel withdrew, Hamas would keep killing Jews. That's it. There's no substitute for victor here.
Both Hamas and Iran's foreign ministry spokesman have criticized comments that you've made supporting Israel. So obviously you must be saying something right.
Must be doing something right. So I had the Hamas guy say, listen, I keep talking about what happens when your nation's at risk, when your family's at risk. What did we do in World War II? Well, to end the war, we dropped 2 atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki because the Japanese weren't going to quit. And Truman had to make a hard decision. And after that, they surrendered. They expected 1 million U.S. casualties to invade mainland Japan. My dad was in New Guinea. I mean, there would have been 1 million Americans killed at least trying to conquer mainland Japan, but it worked. It ended the war. I'm not suggesting we use a nuclear weapon in Gaza. It'd be like nuking yourself because that's in their backyard. Right. I am suggesting give Israel the weapons they need to break the back of Hamas, try to limit civilian casualties, but understand Hamas is the problem here. Give Israel the weapons they need to win the war they can't afford to lose.
Let me ask you this question, Senator. What right do we have to tell Israel how to fight their war?
So this is the point. They're an ally, right? Number one, Joe Biden is basically trying to tell Israel, let me run the war for you. And here's my response to Israel. Say, don't. Don't.
You mean President Afghan Biden?
Yeah, you're letting the people run the war that really don't know what they're doing. They withdrew from Afghanistan, still thought it was a good idea. They're letting Russia run amok. I mean, we're just being, the Houthis, everybody else. If I'm Israel, I've got to make these decisions. Allies are there to help. Don't let Biden and his team take over this war. Israel can't afford to let that happen.
We seem to be more interested in helping their adversaries. The U.S. military anchored a temporary pier on Gaza's coast today. The question is, how will that be used?
Well, look at UNRWA. How was it used? It's a UN organization designed to help the Palestinians that were used to help Hamas. I don't know what's going to happen with the pier. I don't want any innocent loss of life. But Israel's in a world of hurt. Wherever they turn, there's a radical Islamic group wanting to cut their throats. They're in a fight for their life. They're on the ground in Gaza, and Hamas is using their own people as human shields. What do you expect Israel to do? What is proportional? What is the right response when people want to destroy you and slaughter your family because of your religion? What's the right response? I think the response is do what you have to do.
Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, my guest, talking about what's unfolding in Israel. Speaking of the Palestinians, those in Gaza, I don't think anyone wants to see civilians there injured. They're having difficulty getting out. We're having difficulty with some of the neighboring countries being participants in this. Let's talk about the role that Egypt could be playing.
Okay, so, Egypt's an ally. They've blocked trucks from coming in to Rafah crossing because the Israelis have taken it over. They're now putting the Palestinian people at risk. They won't let one Palestinian come into Egypt. Do you see any of these countries taking the Palestinians in? I can tell you right now, the Arab world complains about the Palestinians, but they haven't done much to help.
Why?
We provide. Well, I just think they see them as a problem.
So they want them to be. They want them to be Israel's problem, and they want to tell Israel how to deal with them.
Well, MBS in Saudi Arabia, and we've talked about this a lot, Tony, he seems to be willing to do something new. The Palestinians have suffered from corrupt leaders and terrorist leaders. Nothing will change until you change your school system. How do they teach math in Gaza and the West Bank? If you had 10 Jews and you killed 6, how many would be left? So I'm hoping that Saudi Arabia, through MBS, the Crown Prince, when this thing is over, will come in and provide a new way of doing business in the West Bank and Gaza, new governance, less corrupt, change the culture of death, and live in peace with Israel with security buffers. That's my hope.
So that's leapfrogging ahead to once this present situation is resolved, Hamas eliminated. You see the Arab community as providing the governance there in the Gaza Strip?
I see the Arab community providing. We're not going to be rebuild Gaza. I'm not asking for the American taxpayer, the people listening to this radio show, to rebuild Gaza. But I'm hoping that Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and others, wealthier Gulf nations, will come in and rebuild Gaza, bring about new leadership, younger, less corrupt, destroy Hamas so they don't come back, give Israel security buffers, and let's move forward. The Abraham Accords were between Israel and 6 Arab nations, where we had a peace agreement recognizing Israel and economic integration. I'd like to get that to happen with Saudi. But the answer to the Palestinian problem is the Arab involvement, not our involvement.
And that's really the solution is generational. That's going to...
Generational problem. What did we do once we destroyed the Nazi regime? Well, we tore up the Nazi regime and brought in new people to educate folks not to hate the Jews, and it worked.
But it took time.
Well, it took time. We have a generational problem here.
Yeah.
The Palestinians are the most radicalized people probably on the planet. If you're a young person in their school system, you're taught to hate the Jews and want to destroy Israel from the river to the sea. Means there's no place for Israel.
But so, let me stop you there for just a second, Senator, because we facilitated that with our funding to the United Nations and UNRWA.
100%. We have been part of the problem, and this is a wake-up call, right?
Yeah.
All this money that went into concrete to build tunnels. They've got a tunnel network in Gaza you would not believe.
Right.
I mean, it's unbelievable what they've been able to do.
I wish they could do our interstates here in the United States. We'd probably have.
Got to give if you need a tunnel dug, call Hamas.
We know
tunnel diggers.
Senator, we're almost out of time. I want to switch to another topic very quick. You're on the Senate Judiciary Committee. The House Oversight Committee looking into the impeachment, or contempt, rather, of the Attorney General, looking for information regarding the interview that the President did with Special Counsel Robert Hur. The President this afternoon exerting executive privilege, blocking this information to Congress.
This is a big deal, an outrage, and abuse of the law. What are we talking about? The Special Counsel interviewed President Biden about handling classified information. Part of their findings was he was nice, old, and confused.
Right.
Well, don't you want to find out what he actually said and how he said it? I think President Biden owes it to the American people to release these tapes so we can judge for ourselves. Can you imagine if the shoe were on the other foot, there was some report that Trump was just out of it? They'd be clamoring to have it released. So I don't think executive privilege applies. Let the American people hear these tapes. It's important we can evaluate for ourselves the fitness of Joe Biden.
All right, we got to leave it there. Senator Lindsey Graham, always great to talk with you. Thanks for joining us.
Pal. God bless.